3 months from today, it'll be opening night at Murnane Field. And for this first episode in March here on the Soxcast, who better to talk about the hype surrounding opening night 2022 to talk about amazing 2021 season. You hear them on Mixler as the voices of the Blue Sox, and they are your co-directors of communications for your Blue Sox, Jack Angelucci, Joe Puccio. Guys, finally got you on the Soxcast, and it's about time.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Tim. We're excited to do this.
Yeah, I feel like it was a few months in the making here, so happy to finally hop on here, Tim.
Yeah, I think it's only appropriate because of the fact that, we're now 3 months away from opening night, and, we'll get to that eventually. But, for those listening or watching this that don't really know what it is that you do, to quote Office Space. So what exactly do you two do here?
Yeah, so we're the play-by-play voices for the Blue Sox. So Jack and I will switch every other game for play-by-play, but it's more than just that. We also have some social media responsibilities. So, Jack and I will run the Twitter and Instagram during games throughout the season. Jack does a lot of press release stuff in the off season. So it's more than just watching the game and sort of calling it. We do a lot of behind the scenes stuff that makes our broadcast and makes our media team a little bit, different.
I mean, yeah, he nailed it. I got nothing to say.
Leaving him speechless out here.
Yeah.
So, coming into, so this is obviously your first summer doing this kind of thing. And, you probably got the job description, way back several months before the season started, but could you have ever imagined, everything that kind of happened, and also just, I knew what I was getting into, but at the same time, you also didn't know what you were getting yourself into with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Joe and I knew that on the air wise, we were going to be fine. We've done a zillion games together all the way back to high school. So that kind of was pretty much as expected. The stuff kind of behind the scenes he talks about, a little bit different than we expected. And a lot more fun than we expected, realistically. We had a blast this summer. Met a lot of great people. Had a lot of fun, honestly. Just before the games was my favorite part, just kind of hanging out and just kind of, talking, just hanging out and stuff like that was probably the most fun part for me. Meeting the players. All of our staff was great this summer. I think we have a lot of the same pieces in place staff-wise for this upcoming season. So it's going to be a really good season, I think, too.
Yeah, I think that sort of Jack sort of hit what made this summer so special, is that we were just interacting with a bunch of different people. And obviously, the day-to-day operations, our staff in Utica was awesome. To be able to work with a bunch of different people, both media and marketing, to sort of get a collective team together on issues was great. But Jack and I, because we're broadcasters, we sort of have to not only talk to our players, but talk to the opposing players too, and sort of get their thoughts coming into a game and stuff like that. So I think the best part of the summer back in 2021 was just interacting. Jack said it. We knew that our on-air chemistry was going to be fine. We weren't worried about that. But because that was already set in stone that Jack and I were going to have good chemistry on air, we wanted to see how far we could go. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that Jack and I sort of, take it to another level. We have to take it to another level with other people. So I think that's what made this past summer special.
So on the social media end of things, when a team finds its certain thing that's their thing, it makes it easier to, tweet out content or, post on Instagram, put it wherever on social media. And that thing, as you know, and with the help, as we heard last week on from Garrett Gray, Pump It Up was just a thing that everyone gravitated to. And social media wise, I feel like that was just super easy for y'all to just, hammer home, especially early in the season. And then once, you had a lot of barrages where run after run after run was scoring. He's just like, oh, easy, just tweet, Pump It Up, and boom, done.
Yeah. Sometimes things just kind of fall in your lap. That was a pretty easy one. Didn't take a lot of thinking or creative ideas to come up with that, but it worked out great. People loved it. We loved it up in the booth. I think, it worked out well, and that was kind of the theme for the whole season, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Jack and I would always pump it up too up there in the booth. I know not many people could see us because we're all the
You
way
did it.
up there,
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah, he's
we
right.
were always throwing them up. And it was just a really good thing to sort of bring the team together. I know that summer baseball, you're only there for a few months, so you have to try and find something very quickly to bring the team together. And I think Pump It Up was that. But not only did it bring the players together, but it brought us as a staff together. We were always hoping that we would score 15 runs in a game so that we could keep pumping it up. So I think that, as Jack said, it sort of fell into our laps. It was very easy for us to do. But it sort of went beyond just the players having that chemistry on the field.
Yeah, and you talk about being one with the fans and the city, and watching these guys and how fans gravitate towards all of them, but specifically, I mean, they were right below you because you're at the top of the bleachers in the grandstand behind home plate, and right below you in a game back in late June. I think it was on like a Monday. It was super random, and it was Eddie's Hype House. I mean, have you ever? I mean, we all expect the local guys to bring in a big, following, but for a guy from Bergenfield, New Jersey, out of then Coppin State in Baltimore, now Barry University, Miami. I mean, I feel like that game in particular. I mean, usually Monday night games attendance wasn't great. I'm pretty sure that was a lengthy rain delay also, but I can't even imagine. That had to be one of the standout games for both of y'all to call, especially with Eddie's Hype House literally right in your lap.
Yeah, I didn't understand it at all. I remember Jack and I, we were just calling the game like it was normal. I think Eddie batted second. So the leadoff guy got up, and then I couldn't even hear myself. Like it was that loud for Eddie's Hype House. And but the thing is, it was only loud for Eddie. So if Eddie was on second base, they wanted him to steal third. They would rather see the batter strike out if Eddie was able to go to third. So like it was the weirdest thing. But I tell you, I have never seen a fan base like that just sort of get absolutely hype around one particular player. It was really fun to watch. And we after that game, we kind of wanted Eddie's Hype House to keep coming because it gave him confidence out there. I think the team sort of looked up into the grandstand and sort of just had a laugh about it. And obviously, Tim, you said they were right under us. So anytime Eddie went up to the plate, we sort of we stopped talking and we let the crowd sort of dictate where the play was going. And I think that was a really special part of the summer because anytime you can be different, especially in a broadcast, you want to use it to your advantage.
And just going off what Joe said, I mean, I don't know if they knew who Eddie was beforehand, but I mean, they picked a great guy to do that.
Yeah.
He was so charismatic all summer long, and spent all that time after the game with those guys, signing autographs, just hanging out with them and stuff like that too. So I think that also the way that he handled that kind of speaks to his character. So I want to give him credit for that, obviously too, because it's one thing to have fans that are passionate, but if you can get the players to kind of give back, it helps people come back and kind of keeps people in the stands, and things like that can happen.
So you talk about just weird things. The one thing that really stood out to me early in the season, it was the first week, and promotion-wise, you guys and Juice and I think everyone in general was having a tough time trying to figure out what are we going to do for the Soniata game on Wednesday night. And it officially became Dollar Dog Night, which, I mean, were you shocked to see the players take it, spin it as their own, as Glizzy Day on social media, and just saying it all day long, which did result in a win.
Yeah, that was another interesting one too. Like you said, we were just kind of trying to find something, and that's what we landed on. And same thing again, really. Once you get that player support, it can turn into something very special. We're lucky that our players kind of had our back on that one and turned it into something. And made it fun. And that's kind of what it's all about, especially in summer ball, is having fun and making sure that everyone feels involved, from the top row of the bleachers all the way down to whoever's taking tickets. I mean, that's kind of how we run things, I feel like, as an organization. And that's kind of a culmination of that right there, as you see what was Glizzy Day. So,
yeah, I mean, it was something about that 2021 team that you threw anything in that locker room and you just knew it was going to stick. You knew someone was going to laugh about it, and you knew that someone was going to make a joke about it in a week. So, our 2021 team was just so cohesive that I think they all had the same sense of humor. They all had the same objective that, if Jack and I were to insert ourselves into that locker room, which, it can be intimidating. You don't really know those players. You don't know where they come from. It sort of made that transition seamless. And I think once Glizzy night was over, I think the rest of the marketing and social media sort of just came naturally to us.
And another weird game, like I feel like Watertown had its fair share of just bizarre, weird games, and none could top the day before the 4th of July, Saturday night game, where it was back and forth, and Watertown's up 2 or 3 runs going into the bottom of the ninth, and Peter Jones from Hamilton College for Watertown is shoving out of the bullpen, but he's getting tired in the bottom of the ninth, and I feel like the ending to that game in the bottom of the ninth, with Mother Nature intervening not once, not twice, but 3 times. I mean, have you ever called the conclusion of a game that was as bizarre as that one, that Saturday night at Murnane?
Yeah, I think I was on play-by-play for that one. So sorry, Jack, I sort of lucked into that one. But it was a walk-off walk, I remember. I
Yes,
think,
it was.
The Rapids just couldn't really get anything going on defense. And, give Utica credit. I think the Blue Sox just did a really good job of being determined and not, falling until the final out. It was the bottom of the lineup, and then I believe it flipped over eventually because everyone was, getting on base and walking. So to answer your question, Tim, it was a unique game to call. I've seen it happen. I've never called one like that before. And it was just sort of, it wasn't like it was a 3 RBI walk-off double where it's into the gap and everyone's running around. It was a slow, methodical win, and it was almost like T-ball. Just go base by base by base, and eventually you're going to score. So it was definitely a fun one to call, and I know that Utica and Watertown had a few run-ins throughout the season. So I think that was a pretty good win for Utica that year.
Yeah, and especially because of the fact, again, while they're making this rally, 3 rain delays that halted their momentum, but it didn't stop them. Nah.
And rain delays are sort of tough for us because Jack and I have to come up with some sort of content to fill through a half hour, 45 minutes. We can't just sit down and eat a few slices of pizza.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go with. I was going to say, you know what? That is the tough part, is that we have nothing that's lined up. If we get in one of those situations, then we can go, all right, back to the studio until we have baseball here again. So that's where sometimes, luckily, if the game is good, like it was that night, we're in a good spot to talk about the game. But kind of segueing into this, Joe and I have had a couple of nights up there where the games go long and the score's not close, and we kind of go off the rails a bit. And luckily, we have a good time, and it's always in good fun. But some of those games definitely are bizarre, like you said, and sometimes even for us, we're up there and we're just gassed by the end of the day. So that was definitely an interesting one that I won't forget for a very long time.
Now, the final week of the season, no matter what sport you're covering as a broadcaster, just a sports fan in general, the home stretch of a season where, the pennant chase in this case, it's always an exciting time, especially when you have all these added in factors, and especially, again, with a special cause, special game in Pink the Park night. I know Jack, unfortunately, was not there for this. We were talking earlier. But, Pooch, you had the play-by-play on this game against the Auburn Double Days where, first place, the chase was still going on, and Auburn was a half a game up at this point. And there was so much going into this game, not just because it was Pink the Park night, breast cancer awareness, but you had Jacob Rosencrantz, the ace of the staff, taking the mound with his grandmother, a 2-time breast cancer survivor, in the stands, also throwing out the first pitch right before he took the bump. I mean, Joe, you just tell me about just how literally, as we know now, because we got, some help from a production crew. That whole night was really a movie.
Yeah, I think that was my most memorable game that I called all summer. And, the reason why is just because I had to tell a story of how Utica was still in this chase and how important it was for the Blue Sox to get home field advantage. At the end of the day, that didn't really matter, but we still had to paint that picture. But then while that's going on, life sort of interjects, and that's when you sort of have to take a step back and realize that baseball is just a game. It's the game that you played as a kid that got you hooked on sports. At least that was for me, and I know that's probably the case for most people around this country. So you mentioned it with Rosencrantz and his grandmother. That was before first pitch. So I had 13 minutes of pregame trying to hype up this game as best as I can, and then life interjected, and then the game happened. It was just the way that it unfolded. I think you can't even script something like that. I know, Tim, you mentioned it was a movie. It just felt like everything that culminated for baseball fans was coming together, and it made calling that game a little more at stake. I think I didn't really have much pressure calling that game because, again, it was, we were halfway through the season. I already done it multiple times, but I knew that it was going to be the game that most people were going to tune into. And I wanted to, live up to those expectations and just make sure that the people who were coming to the game, showing, support for this amazing cause, were treated to an awesome broadcast. And so, Pink the Park night was incredibly special just because there's never really a moment where life sort of comes at you in the middle of the game. And you sort of just take that step back and realize how awesome of a position you're in.
And as the play-by-play guy, you got to have the call for, maybe the best catch you've ever seen in front of you with your own two eyes, with Harris Williams making an absolute gem in the top of the ninth in a 12-1 game, no less.
Yeah, Harris Williams, Jack and I, we said it throughout the season. If there was any ball that was in the air, he was just somehow going to get it. And anytime there was a drive in a center or wherever Harris Williams was playing, you just sort of took an extra half second to explain what was going on, because what you think is a double in the gap is now a robbed base hit, and the Blue Sox have two outs. So, Harris would do it on the base pads too. Like he just stole every base. He made it look so easy. An average man's double was his triple. So Harris Williams making that catch in the top of the ninth, especially when you mentioned, Tim, the Blue Sox were winning by more than 10 runs. You don't need to make that play. You don't want to hurt yourself. Didn't matter for him. He was able to sprawl everywhere.
And I think it's a good segue. We talk about standing out as Harris, breaking the single season stolen base record with 30 swipes during the year and a 338 batting average that got him all PGCBL honors. We talk about Rosie, who also all league at an ERA under 1 during the regular season. I'd love to hear what other guys really stood out to you. Maybe it's more of a sleeper. Or you could just go with the big dogs like those two. And obviously, the new all-time hits king in the U, Luis De Leon.
Yeah, all those guys you mentioned are absolutely stellar. They were stellar all year long. And the thing about this team that we talked about a lot was that it was always kind of a next guy up mentality. No one really had a summer where they were on every single night. In baseball, you can't be on every single night. It just can't happen. That's the way the nature of the game is. But this team did a really good job of finding that next man up and had each other's backs the whole way. Obviously, Ryan Enos is kind of and Dewey Roden are kind of like the heartbeat of this team, local guys, and they always kind of bring the energy for this group. And, they're coming back for a third year with us. We're excited for that. But like all the guys you mentioned, and pretty much from top to bottom, everyone had a moment this summer where it's kind of tough to single one guy out. But I think that really was the reason why this team was so successful, is because they had it from every which way coming in. And personally, if you need to pick one guy, I know we love to watch Figgy go out there on the mound.
Yeah.
He had a great summer. Wish him the best of luck in his future endeavors. Great guy, and he had a great summer. We had a lot of fun when he get in ball games.
Yeah, Jack took my individual player. I was going to mention Figgy. I felt like he was just unstoppable towards the end of the year. And if the Blue Sox had a 2-run lead and we saw Figueroa in the bullpen, we're just like, the setup man's just got to get 3 outs. That's all he has to do. So Figgy was a whole lot of fun to watch. But Jack sort of said it perfectly. This team, they were so cohesive, and they had the same objective, and they wanted to work so hard to get there that if someone went down or if, the one of our best hitters was not having his night, there was always someone in that lineup. And it was a 10-man lineup, so there was a lot of players that could hit, that, could step up and play that role. So I just think that the Blue Sox from 2021 just had that chemistry that not many summer league teams can get, especially with how fast they got that chemistry. It was awesome to watch, and you can only hope that the 2022 team does the exact same thing.
And let's talk about your favorite guy, Figgy, because we talk about standout individual performances. I don't know if anything can top what Figgy did in a moment where he was thrusted into the game out of nowhere because Dewey Roden's taking them out against Auburn, still in that chase for the Central Division title. And he has to come out after 2 innings because of an arm issue, which, as it turns out, it required Tommy John surgery. But for Figgy to come in the 3rd inning I think it might have been either scoreless or 1 or 2-0 at that point. But for Figgy, who hadn't thrown 3+ innings since high school, to go in, throw 7 innings of 1-hit ball without walking anyone and striking out 8. Being on the call for that, you got to witness a masterclass.
Yeah, things like that, once again, they fall in your lap sometimes, and you're lucky to be a part of it. And that's one of those games that we were lucky to be a part of. I know we enjoyed that game, definitely, because as we talked about, he's a great guy. He deserved it. To step in that moment was huge. And, he's a guy that's just tough to hit, really, tough to barrel up. And we saw that all year long with him. And he's the type of guy that steps in when needed, just like a lot of guys in this team. And he was called on that night and had an absolute awesome performance. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, Jack and I, our vantage point is pretty high up in the grandstand. So we sort of have an overhead view of home plate, and we can see where pitches are moving, where they're being located. And I don't think there was a single instance where Figgy threw the same pitch twice. And he either had that fastball that was going to cut right inside you, or he had a sweeping pitch or a changeup that was going to fall to the outside part of the plate. And it was unhittable. And, Figgy was that closer towards the end of the year, pitching maybe 1 or 2 innings a game. But for him to step up for 5+ and just dominate, it was just amazing because, it was almost like you wanted Utica to get 3 outs so that Figgy could go back on the mound and just watch him throw. That was kind of the feeling that night. But yeah, Jack said it. He's an unbelievable person. He was in a few of our social media pieces. He dumped ice water over my head for the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. That was a whole lot of fun. And you love seeing the guys that, deserve to have good performances go out and shove.
I couldn't agree with you more. And to flip it, the next night with a chance to clinch a playoff spot, it was a complete 180 where it was all pitching. On this night against Watertown, it was all hitting. You got to see I feel like, calling a gem on the mound is way different compared to calling an absolute hitting clinic. And that's what happened against Watertown on this particular night, which ended up being the last game of the regular season as the next night got rained out.
Yeah. That was a fun one to watch. It was, once again, almost like Joe said, kind of like a T-ball thing, but except this time it was because the Blue Sox were hitting the ball so well. Just everyone got theirs that night, and it was a very cool way to end the regular season, and a very fun one for us, our last game at Murnane for that year together. And it was really fun to call and be a part of, just like the whole season was. But that night specifically, I'll remember that one for a while, with all those hits, all those runs. And one of the ones where it was one of those games where normally you'd think Joe and I would get a little tired up in the booth, but the way that one played out, the amount of electric plays that were made in that game, big time hits and stuff like that, that was an easy one to kind of stay into for all 9 innings.
Yeah, I think we had to stay on our toes because you never really knew what was going to happen. And a part of that is because Watertown, they wanted their starter to get innings. Watertown wasn't in the playoff chase, so it's summer ball, so they're just going to stick to their game plan, and they know they have to reach X amount of innings for each guy. So even though the starter, I believe, how many runs did he give up that night? It had to have been around 13 or 14 runs.
Yeah, I think it might have been 13.
Yeah, so they did not care, really. I think Watertown just wanted to get innings in, and you could see that the starter was gassed. He had no command of his pitches. The Blue Sox were just they were just roping every single pitch, and it was just like, I think I went to Jack. I was like, Jack, when are they going to take this guy out? Because it's been 12 runs. I think he's gotten his work in today, and he was still out there. And I think the Blue Sox sort of looked at that and they were like, yeah, let's just have some fun before the playoffs start. So that game was a lot of fun, especially, as Jack said, the last one that we called at Murnane that year. We spent so much time over the summer at Murnane trying to just, get better and have fun while broadcasting. So, to end the Murnane season like that was certainly special.
And not only did you, there's so much scoring, but the fact that a single game runs record was broken on this night, and from an unlikely source. I've talked about it multiple times, but what was it like being able to call Angel DiFederico roping one down the left field line for the solo shot to get that 20th run of the game, which set that new single game run record?
Yeah. So this one, for me, I have mixed emotions about it because I actually kind of blew the call, and Joe knows because earlier, was it earlier in the year, or earlier in that game, or earlier in the week? One of the three, which I guess kind of doesn't narrow it down. Anyways, earlier on, I thought one was gone, right? And it was
earlier that week. Yeah,
the energy was getting up, and I was like, and then didn't get out. So then, as a broadcaster, that's like kind of like the mortal sin, and I'm like, oh my god, you got to be kidding me. So then this happens. My only thought is like, okay, like just don't like. I didn't think it was gone. I was like, just don't oversell it. And then it goes over the wall, and I'm like, oh god, you got to be kidding. So for me, it's mixed emotions, but it was a very cool moment to watch. And I had to play catch up a little bit, but I'd say if I had to do a do-over for the summer, that'd probably be the call I'd have back. But when I heard you going down this path, I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna have to do some explaining here. But yeah, no, that was a cool moment for the team, and to be a part of it was pretty cool, even if it wasn't my best stuff, I guess. But it was fun, definitely.
Yeah, those are sort of the moments that our fans probably don't even realize. I think the average fan probably heard Jack and was like, "Oh yeah, that's like awesome call." But it's just the broadcaster in us that's just like, we want to make sure it's perfect, and especially for a guy like Angel, I think he could not have been nicer to our media team, and he always wanted to be a part of social media pieces and videos. And he was just a very charismatic guy. And so we sort of wanted to highlight him throughout the season. For him to hit a home run to make that 20th run, I think, was sort of the icing on the cake for that game and for the season. Angel was an amazing defensive catcher, and you wanted to see him sort of, get that big time bomb that, Jack, you only had one home run call in the season. I only had one. So we never really got to see a bunch of home runs throughout the year. And, for Angel to be one of those guys, it was awesome because, he could not have been a better representative of what the Blue Sox organization is.
One thing I'll never forget with Angel was that walk-off walk Ramo hit that Ramo had to beat Watertown. I remember Angel finding the camera and yelling, Blutica. Like, I feel like having that where, Blutica was a new thing where like, okay, we want to do this hashtag and have it be symbolic of this team. And when you have a guy like Angel and the rest of the guys hyping that up, I feel like you got that has to make you feel warm inside knowing that they're helping you in that way.
Yeah, I think that, sure, it's help, right? Makes our job easier. But you want to be there for those moments. Our job as a media team is, we don't want to fabricate anything. Obviously, we have our skits and our social media pieces that, hey, say this because it's a line. But when you're running out there on the field for a walk-off hit, you don't want to miss any of those moments. And so for Angel to walk up to the camera and do that, that's just social media people's heaven. I mean, that's what you want to post. That's what you want the fans to see, because there's no other way you can have that access. So, yeah, sure. I'll pour one for Angel. Thanks for the social media help there. Because it certainly made that experience for the summer. It just added to what makes Utica amazing.
Yeah, and I think the part of the reason why that resonates so well with people, especially in that moment, is when it's very authentic. And in that moment, that comes off as extremely authentic, obviously, because like Joe said, that can't be scripted. That's not something you can write up and give to a guy while he's running around the field celebrating. So those moments are what are able to resonate with fan bases, and being authentic like that is kind of what I think our calling card here is. And that's how we try to connect with our fans, I think.
So unfortunately, as we know, Utica wins the Central Division regular season title, and they get home field advantage for round 1 of the PGCBL playoffs. But unfortunately, they can't take advantage of that home field advantage because of a double booking at Murnane with the Junior Legion State Championships. But you guys nevertheless made the trip all the way out to Auburn at Falcon Park to call this game against the Double Days. And, obviously being Blue Sox guys, being co-directors of communication and being on the call for this one, I feel like it must have been hard to keep the energy level up when, Auburn tagged Rosie early and Utica just couldn't get anything going for whatever reason. But, tell me about the experience of calling that playoff game, what it was like at Falcon Park, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it was fun. We had a good time traveling out there. Obviously, the game did not go the way we wanted it to, but making a road trip always fun. Seeing a new facility always fun, and that place obviously is top notch. But about the game itself, it was unfortunately one of the worst games of the year for the Blue Sox, and it just comes at the wrong time. And that's how sports works sometimes. Is some nights don't have it, and when it's win or go home, you really can't afford to have that happen on a night like that. And that's what happened. And give credit to Auburn. They got the job done, and they had no control over not being able to play the game in Utica. So you can't control that at the end of the day, and it's an unfortunate end to a great season. But in terms of going down there and the facility and the way we were treated there, everything was great. And can't complain about that. It was a good experience, but obviously an unfortunate way to end things.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned keeping the energy levels throughout. And, I was on play-by-play for that game, so you never know what's going to happen. Even though Auburn got out to that early lead and, it was a whole lot of 1, 2, 3 innings for the Blue Sox, you just never knew with this team, because 2 nights before, we called a game where the Blue Sox had 20 runs. So there was never a time where I thought this game's over. Never, because the Blue Sox were if they didn't score 20 runs, they would score, they probably would get off to a slow start, but then score 8 runs in the 4th. So it was, the team always got to a high run total. So for that game, the energy, trying to keep the energy high wasn't really a problem. And obviously, we're Blue Sox guys and we want the team to do well, but when you're a broadcaster, you can't really pick sides. And not that we were, going against the Blue Sox or anything, but, you have to keep that energy high because, Auburn's playing well, and that's the storyline. Auburn's they're smacking the baseball. What are the Blue Sox going to do to respond to this? And so that game was just interesting because, sure, it felt like, hope might have been lost, and you get to the 7th inning and there's only 1 or 2 hits on the ledger. But because we had just called a game 2 nights ago where the Blue Sox set an organization run record, there was any doubt that the Blue Sox could get back into that game. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but still a really fun game to call. And because that was our only road trip of the year, it's probably the game that I remember the most.
So turning the page now to 2022, as we have now 3 months until the home opener against, it's funny enough to have the home opener in a rematch against the Auburn Double Days. I mean, how poetic is that got to be?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Obviously, tough to speculate this far out, but I think that In talking to Juice and to George, we're really happy with the way the team's looking for this year. And playing Auburn will be fun to start things off, obviously, especially with the way things ended last year, a little bit of motivation. But I think that everyone seems ready to get out there and kind of get back at it for this season and kind of a more normalized schedule, at least compared to last year, in terms of, not seeing the same team a zillion times in a row, however it shook out. But yeah, so I think we're excited for this season. And I think starting off with Auburn is going to be fun to, get everybody inside Murnane and hopefully have a good time to start things off.
Yeah, I think Jack mentioned what I was going to bring up, the fact that the schedule's more normal. I'm from Western New York, so I was really looking forward to playing teams like Batavia and Geneva and Jamestown. We didn't see them once. So to play the Diamond Dogs 75 times, and, it's great, right? They're a local rival, but I think that we're ready to see some new teams. We're ready to see some organizations and some coaching staffs that we have no idea. I mean, there's a team in Canada that I think Jack and I might have learned about in August. Like there just wasn't, it was a weird season because we were out of COVID, but not out of COVID. So I think that we're just ready to see some new teams, potentially go to some new stadiums. We might be traveling a little bit. So you never know.
Yeah, and speaking of, obviously last year they didn't have a team, but reinstated in the league. Having that rivalry renewed with Adirondack has got to be something exciting because of the fact, they're only a half an hour or so up north on Route 12. And, they knocked out Utica back in the 2019 playoffs. So that's another thing to look forward to. And, and obviously you talk about, we saw Watertown a million times. We saw Mohawk Valley a million times, but seeing all these new teams, as you mentioned, is another great thing. But on the players side of things, obviously Enos, Dewey, you mentioned, are third-year guys that will be back on this team. But a lot of fresh new faces, looking at the guys, current signings and all that. Are there any specific guys that, you kind of like point like, okay, this is a guy I'm excited about coming to Utica?
Oof, it's a tough question. I think we'll get a better picture of who we have individually once we get closer to the season. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of big time power hitters that we have in this lineup coming into the 2022 season that I don't think the 2021 Blue Sox really had. I mentioned it earlier. Jack and I only had one home run call each this past year, and I go to school with broadcasters that are in the Cape Cod Baseball League. They said they had 3 home run calls a week. So, the fact that Utica wasn't really that much of a power team and yet still won the division and were able to be successful that way, I think that, bringing in some power bats like we are going to see in 2022 is going to be a special thing. Individually, it's tough to pinpoint one player. Just because everyone that we're bringing in right now, it's got some high profile schools, and just hoping that in 3 months from now, no one's on the top 50 USA baseball and they leave to play for them, or they get an opportunity in the Cape, or they get the league somewhere else. So individually tough to pinpoint right now, but I think what the Blue Sox have right now is a power lineup with a lot of fiery pitchers, especially left-handed arms on the mound. So whole lot of moving parts still going on.
Yeah, we're still in the middle of announcing the roster as of right now too, but it looks like things are shaping up pretty well right now. And I think that Joe said it best. There's some guys that can really can hit on this team for this upcoming season, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think that everything's headed in a very good direction right now. We should see a team that's going to compete for another divisional title again.
And it's going to be different now because now instead of the 3-division format, which, given that, now you got 16 teams, it's a big league. And now it's only 2 divisions, 8 teams each. But, with Utica being in the West Division, which isn't as strong because the East Division has the reigning champions from Saugerties, who, by the way, they come to Utica during the season. Amsterdam, who we've seen a lot of. And then also, but the West Division's obviously weaker because Saugerties, Amsterdam, Mohawk Valley, Albany are all out east. But in the West, there's a very good chance that they can win this division against teams like Jamestown, Auburn, and Geneva.
Yeah, and I think that the West Division, last season, the East Division, we sort of said whoever's coming out of the East is going to win it all, and it was an all-Eastern championship. So, Amsterdam and Saugerties were just different teams, and I know that Ethan Frank and Matt Zimbolo, the broadcast team for the Mohawks, are going to love me saying that, but I think that Utica being out west, it will be good for the regular season. And because Utica is the most Eastern team in the West, you're going to have more games against Saugerties and more games against Amsterdam and the top teams in that East Division, which will shape them up for the postseason. So I think I'm a big fan of the two divisions. The Central Division was just kind of a crapshoot. You had Watertown up here, Utica, Little Falls, and then Auburn was over here. It was just everywhere. While the West and East sort of just played in their own little categories. So I think I'm excited for that 2-division format, and you just got to focus on yourself.
Yeah, I think like you said, Tim, there's a lot of opportunity to win the West this season, and it's kind of just right in front of you, so go out and get it done. But like I said, the way the roster shapes up looks pretty good for that. I think fans should expect that to be the goal and that to be the expectation with this team, is they've had a ton of success the last couple seasons. Unfortunately, the postseason hasn't gone necessarily the way they want it to, but I think the pieces are still there. And like I said, when you have guys that come back for a third year, like Rhino and Dewey, you're in a good spot in terms of team morale and having a heartbeat and identity for your team.
And speaking of, Jamestown, one of those other teams that, we see for the first time ever and first time since the rebranding, as they're now, I laugh when I say this, the Tarp Skunks. That's one of the more out there team names I've seen. I personally like the Jammers name a hell of a lot more, but that's just me. But what to look forward to in 2022, we did a lot of great things with, Glizzy Day was a huge impromptu success. Pick the Park Night is going to be a big deal again, with now being that big rivalry, as I think we're going to have it tentatively, against the Diamond Dogs for the first time ever on Pink Night. And then, I feel like there's a lot to look forward to, but, what can fans expect, in terms of like the schedule itself? And then also just with, promotional stuff that, is in the works, like having, Autism Acceptance Night and my personal baby, Alumni Weekend in July.
Yeah, a lot of cool things on tap for this season, Tim. I think that fans are not going to be disappointed when they come to Murnane to spend a night at the ballpark. Simply put, we have a lot of things in the works right now. Our team's done a great job of kind of having some different things pop up in their minds and putting it out there. And we've been kind of hearing all ideas. So we have a bunch of different things that are kind of lining up. I think it's going to be a really fun season with some of the things we're going to try to do inside the ballpark.
Just be on the edge of your seat. It's going to be a wild off season, sort of, finalizing that schedule. But as Jack said, a lot of good ideas on the table right now. And, it's all about just picking the ones that we feel like will bring the most people to the ballpark and ones that are going to be the most fun. So that's sort of what Jack and I, along with the social media and web pieces that we're doing, that's sort of, what we're thinking about.
So again, 3 months to opening night. Hopefully we'll be doing a lot of pumping up and a lot of winning at the same time as we really make an even bigger chase to a PGCBL championship. We won a couple of regular season division titles, but now we want the whole damn thing. And, these guys, they'll be presiding over it all as the voices of the Blue Sox on the call for the broadcast. And of course, presiding all over the social media and all that shebang. Jack Angelucci, Joe Puccio, thanks for the time. About time we actually got this Soxcast in. And, countdown, might as well put that countdown clock on now, because again, 3 months, but that June 4th better get here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Tim. Appreciate you having us on. We had a blast, and thank you for all you do for the Blue Sox and everything else.
Yeah, 2022. Let's make it just as fun, maybe even better than 2021. And it's gonna be up to Jack and Tim to sort of along with me to make sure that happens. So really excited for this upcoming season. And 3 months is gonna feel like 2 weeks once June comes around.
So, Blue Sox Nation, that does for this week's episode of the Soxcast. Next week, I got two more guests, guys from our 2021 squad that we didn't even touch on, but the Kentucky boys, now freshmen for the Wildcats. Michael Dallas, Tanner Kim are going to join me on next week's edition. But for Jack Angelucci and Joe Puccio, your co-directors of communications for the Blue Sox, I'm Tim Best signing off for this episode of the Soxcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next week and 3 months from today at Murnane for the first time in 2022.